Understanding sublet contracts is essential if you're considering renting out your apartment while you're away or taking over someone else's lease temporarily. A poorly structured sublease can lead to financial liability, legal disputes, and even eviction. A sublease agreement is a legal covenant between a tenant and subtenant, typically with the property owner's approval. It allows the original tenant to transfer their lease to another person, who will use part or all of the premises under the same provisions as the original lease. The key distinction is that the original tenant remains responsible for paying rent and is liable for any violations of the original lease terms. Three main parties are involved in a sublet arrangement. First, there's the property owner who formed the original lease. Second is the sublandlord, or original tenant, who signed the lease with the landlord. Third is the subtenant, who forms an agreement with the original tenant to lease part or all of the property temporarily. Here's how a sublease typically works. When a tenant needs to move out before their lease ends, they first seek the landlord's consent to sublet. Once approved, they find a new tenant to move in and pay monthly rent. The sublease agreement is drafted when all parties agree to terms, including rent rate, lease duration, and property details. Subletting offers several advantages. It helps tenants avoid breaking their lease and incurring penalties. It allows for temporary relocation without losing housing. And it provides financial relief by covering rent during extended absences. However, subletting also comes with risks. The original tenant remains liable for unpaid rent or property damage. Finding trustworthy subtenants can be time-consuming, and some landlords impose strict conditions or prohibit subletting entirely. A comprehensive sublet agreement should include several essential elements. These include the property description and address, the full names and addresses of both the original tenant and subtenant, details of the original lease, the duration of the sublease, and the monthly rent the subtenant will pay. Common additional provisions include landlord approval requirements, security deposit terms, late fee policies, utility payment responsibilities, furnishing details, rules about property alterations, and policies regarding pets or smoking. When subletting, the original tenant must continue fulfilling all provisions of their original lease, as it remains valid and legally binding. This creates a situation where the tenant is bound by two separate leases. If the subtenant violates the agreement by damaging property or failing to pay rent, the original tenant is fully liable under the original lease. The tenant must pay the landlord any outstanding amounts and repair damages, though they can later seek remedies against the subtenant for breach of contract. Security deposits and rent payments require careful handling in sublease arrangements. The agreement should specify how deposits are collected and returned. Ideally, subtenants should pay rent directly to the landlord when permitted, reducing financial risk for the original tenant. The original tenant typically remains responsible for property damage, unless otherwise specified in the sublease contract. Subletting isn't limited to residential properties. Commercial subleases allow businesses to rent out part or all of their lease space. These arrangements have additional considerations, including business use restrictions, specific lease terms that may prohibit subleasing, liability considerations, and long-term planning requirements. Commercial subleases typically involve extended commitments and additional legal complexities. To summarize, a sublet contract allows a tenant to lease their rented property to another tenant while remaining responsible for the original lease. Landlord approval is often required before subletting. The agreement should clearly outline key elements like rent, lease duration, and responsibilities. The original tenant remains liable for ensuring the subtenant follows all lease terms. A written sublease agreement is essential to protect both parties and ensure clarity on all obligations.